Our weekly reading, Ekev, Parshat Ekev, is definitely a clear continuation from the previous weekly reading, Vaetchanan. Those two go together in many different ways. There are similar topics, certain ideas that were touched upon in Parshat Vaetchanan are continued in Parshat Ekev. For instance, the Parshat Vaetchanan mentioned how we were standing next to Har Sinai and got the Torah, and here in Parshat Ekev, the sin of the golden calf will be mentioned, which is continuation, of course, of that story. But this is the division. There's a Kabbalistic inyan in all of this, because Vaetchanan, according to the Graph, corresponds to Sfirat Chochma, and Ekev corresponds to Bina. Chochma and Bina are two aspects. Sometimes they say that it corresponds in the human head to two hemispheres, right? They say right and left, right? Different perceptions of our wisdom and understanding. The two really go together. They are called in Kabbalah Abba ve'ima, father and mother. Chochma is general wisdom, and Bina is what develops it. It makes us understand one thing after another. Similar relationship exists between written Torah and oral Torah. Written Torah gives a kind of trampoline, ideas that the oral Torah develops. That's why the oral Torah is to listen one thing after another. The Talmud tells us you cannot listen to the same thing to many people talking at the same time, right? You can only listen to one thing at once. But the written Torah corresponds to seeing. You could see at the same time a whole page with many different words and letters, or the whole sky full of stars that are far away. The Vilna Gaon explains that all of these are corresponding to each other. It's known that the seeing and hearing correspond to Chochma and Bina, and to written and oral Torah, of course. So whatever the case may be, Chochma and Bina go together. By the way, that's the reason the Kabbalists, Mikubalim, say that you're supposed to say the brocha Elokani Shamash Natata Bi immediately after the brocha that we say Asher Yatzarat Adam B'Chochma. The brocha that we say in the morning, that Hashem made us with wisdom, Chochma, right? Kineged Chochma, and then the second brocha that follows it immediately is Bina. The neshama corresponds to the level of Bina, and those two go together. There are other reasons to say these brochas next to each other, and that's what Sephardim and Hasidim and some Ashkenazim do. But one of the reasons, at least, is because these brochas should go together. They actually correspond to Chochma and Bina that always go together. At any rate, our two parshiot that correspond to Chochma and Bina, Vaetchanan and Ekev, obviously go together. It's a very simple pshat. A simple understanding is that they're definitely related to each other. And I just wanted to mention one interesting drash based on the words of Netziv. There was this great sage who was a Rebbe, one of the Rosh Yeshiva in the famous Yeshiva of Volozhin. It's a very small town today. It's really not an important town at all in Belarus, in White Russia, what they call Belarus. But for us, it was an incredibly important town, because that's where most of the sages at that time used to get their education, the Lithuanian type of derech, of limud, the way to learn. It was founded by Rabbi Chaim Volozhin, who was a student of the Vilna Gaon. So it was a very important and very famous yeshiva that existed for many generations, and most of the Lithuanian rabbis used to learn there. And Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Yehuda Tzvi Berlin, that's his full name. Netziv is an abbreviation, was one of the Rosh Yeshiva there, and he writes a very interesting thing in his commentary to the Torah. Ha'emek Davar is how his commentary to the Torah called. So we read closer to the beginning of our parsha, כל המצווה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום תשמרון לעשות למען תחיון ורביתם ובאתם וירשתם את הארץ אשר נשבע השם לאבותיכם. I'll translate based on the Living Torah translation of Rabbi Kaplan. You must safeguard and keep the entire mandate that I am prescribing to you today. You will then survive, flourish, and come right, you will be able to live in the land that Hashem gives to your fathers. So my interest right now is the connection of keeping the Torah and learning the mitzvot of the Torah to coming to the land of Israel. It would seem that the two things are not necessarily connected. I mean, there are, of course, mitzvot. There are some commandments that apply specifically to the land of Israel. But the Netziv, I think, puts it really beautifully. This is what he says. That even at the time when it's not possible to practically fulfill all the commandments, as was in the case in the beginning, before we entered and right after we entered the land of Israel, not all commandments applied yet. For instance, the Talmud tells us that certain commandments applied only 14 years after we entered the land of Israel. Some commandments relating to the land of Israel and laws like Chala. In general, by the way, you should know the law is, as the Talmud tells us in Masechet Kiddushin, that those commandments that are not related to the land specifically, they apply everywhere. So commandments like Shabbat, Tefillin, all the kashrut laws, of course, all the forbidden relations, all of them apply everywhere, whether we live in the land of Israel or we live in Galut in diaspora. But the commandments that have to do with the land specifically, like separating certain tithes, Truma, Maaser, the law that the land should rest once in 7 years, the laws that certain kilayim laws, certain forbidden mixtures when you plant in the land. Most of these laws apply only to the land of Israel. There are a few exclusions which I'm not going to go into. For example, Orla, the first 3 years that the fruits of the tree are forbidden to be eaten, it applies outside the land of Israel as a special halacha, special law. According to one opinion in the Talmud, it's halacha Moshe Sinai, that was given to Moshe Sinai, that even outside the land of Israel, you're not allowed to eat fruits for the first 3 years after the tree is planted. But most of the laws that apply to the land apply only in the land of Israel. So, what the Netziv is trying to say that some of these laws didn't even apply immediately when we entered the land of Israel. The Talmud tells us that some of them applied only after we actually settled, which took 14 years. And what he's trying to say is that even those commandments that don't apply yet, nevertheless, Hashem wants our people to study these commandments, so that we'll be ready to fulfill them when the time comes. From this we learn that the same applies to the time of exile, right? For most of our history, the Jewish nation was in exile. There were some Jews in the land of Israel, but most of us were exiled. Some were exiled back in the Babylonian times and remained in exile. Most of the Sephardi and Dota Mizrach Jews were in exile already from the First Temple times. And then the majority of Ashkenazic Jews, we were exiled from Roman times and ended up in Europe. So whatever the case may be, most of the time, some of these commandments don't apply to us at all, the land of Israel commandments. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't study them. We should still study them in order to be ready to perform them when opportunity arises. This reminds me of a famous story that the Brisker Rav used to say when he ended up in the land of Israel, that people don't usually ask questions to the rabbi with regards to things like Truma, Meiser. Why? Because the ancestors didn't, right? Since it didn't apply outside the land of Israel, so they're not really concerned when the questions arises. When the question arises about, let's say, blood that might have been not removed correctly from the meat, that they can ask because that's what their parents did. Whenever they had a question of kashrut of some chicken, they would ask the rabbi of the town. But Trumot and Maaserot, they didn't apply for all these years, so people stopped kind of worrying about it. So that's the big problem. So that's why Netziv is saying we should always be ready. Whenever we'll start keeping these commandments, they're not going to be new to us. We'll be studying these laws and be ready to keep them when they apply. And the word tishmirun, observe, is written with a nun at the end, which indicates a kind of diminishing, meaning, according to him, tishmirun is less than simply tishmiru, you should keep. Tishmirun, meaning, when you study these laws outside the land of Israel, you don't have immediate practical application. But that doesn't mean that you shouldn't study, but still it's not the same. It's never the same when you study something in order to apply it immediately versus when you study theoretically. Meaning, as he says, later when the actual question arises, halacha l'maaseh, when this will be actually applicable, you should review these laws again. You should re-examine the material. You shouldn't just rely on what you studied when it was theoretical. Meaning, the rabbi is given a special kind of help when he studies in order to answer a specific halachic question. When study is done theoretically, it's never the same. So if it now applies practically, you should still review these laws. You shouldn't just rely on what you paskind, what you decided based on theoretical study. And then you will live. Again, the word tichyun, according to him, is less than regular. Not tichyu, but tichyun. The nun at the end kind of diminishes it. That outside the land of Israel, all our soul's vitality is not the same. It's only when we'll enter the land of Israel is the full fulfillment of the goal. So we're kind of practicing here. When we're outside the land of Israel, we're practicing, we're preparing, it's a kind of preparation, and we should learn all the laws that will apply to us when we are in the land of Israel. But the full fulfillment and the full life, all these mitzvot will come to life only when we enter the land of Israel. By the way, according to the Mikubalim, the Kabbalists, the fulfillment of even those mitzvot that apply outside the land of Israel, like tefillin, tzitzit, as I said, all the mitzvot that don't apply, that don't relate to the land specifically, and therefore they apply outside the land of Israel, still their fulfillment in the land of Israel is greater. It's on a higher level. So that's the ultimate goal. When the Jews will be fulfilling all the mitzvot of the Torah in the land of Israel. That's the final ideal for all of us. And meanwhile, when we're in Galut, we're learning those laws so that we'll be ready. Although it's not the same. That's the basic idea that Netziv is trying to tell us based on these verses. And on this, I'm going to end for today. If you like this video, please press like and please subscribe to our channel.